Imagine never being able to stop, not for a moment, not for rest, not for sleep. Every second of your life spent in motion, because stillness means death. For some creatures on Earth, this isn't imagination, it's existence. Tonight, we'll meet the animals that have traded rest for survival. The perpetual movers whose bodies have evolved to thrive in endless motion. From the depths of the ocean to the open sky, these remarkable beings remind us that life finds a way, even when that way means never standing still. Welcome to Bedtime Biology, where science meets serenity. Each night, we explore the quiet wonders of the natural world, calming your mind and sparking your curiosity. If you like these videos, please consider subscribing to the channel and commenting below if you have any feedback or suggestions for topics of future episodes. In the dark waters of the ocean, something glides through the depths. Its body is streamlined, powerful, built for a single purpose: movement. The great white shark has been swimming since the moment it was born, and it will swim until the moment it dies. There is no pause button in its existence, no moment of rest, because for this apex predator and many of its relatives, stopping means suffocating. The great white shark belongs to a group of fish that scientists call obligate ram ventilators. The term sounds technical, clinical even, but it describes something profoundly fundamental to these animals' survival. Unlike most fish, which can actively pump water over their gills, using muscular contractions in their mouths and throats, obligate ram ventilators have lost this ability, or perhaps never fully developed it. Instead, they rely entirely on forward motion to force water into their mouths and across their gill structures. Picture the mechanics of this system. As a great white swims with its mouth partially open, water rushes in, flows past thin, delicate gill filaments, where oxygen diffuses into the bloodstream and exits through the gill slits on either side of the head. It's an elegant system, perfectly efficient for an animal built to be in constant motion. But it comes with an absolute requirement. The shark must keep swimming. Always. The gill filaments themselves are remarkably thin and delicate, increasing the surface area available for gas exchange. In many obligate ram ventilators, these structures have evolved to become even more efficient at extracting oxygen from flowing water, but less capable of functioning when water is still. Special adaptations in the gill arches of great whites and other ram ventilating sharks include fusion points, where the gill filaments connect to each other, preventing the delicate structures from collapsing under the constant pressure of water rushing past them at speed. These fusions are absent in sharks that can pump water over their gills while stationary, revealing how structure follows function in the most literal sense. Mako sharks, among the fastest sharks in the ocean, share this same constraint. They're built like torpedoes, sleek and hydrodynamic, capable of bursts of speed that can exceed 40 miles per hour. But speed isn't optional for Makos. It's part of their basic life support system. Every moment of their lives is spent in forward motion, cutting through the water with powerful sweeps of their crescent-shaped tails. Even when they're not hunting, even when they're simply existing in the vast blue, they're swimming. The whale shark, the largest fish in the sea, presents a fascinating variation on this theme. Despite reaching lengths of over 40 feet and weighing tens of thousands of pounds, this gentle giant must also swim constantly to breathe. Watch a whale shark at a cleaning station or feeding aggregation, and you'll notice it never truly stops. It may slow down, allowing smaller fish to pick parasites from its massive body. But even then, its fins are in motion, its body moving through the water, ensuring that flow across the gills never ceases. But here's where things get interesting. Some of these perpetual swimmers have evolved mechanisms that allow them to approach something resembling rest, even while continuing their endless journey through the water. Research suggests that certain shark species may be capable of unihemispheric sleep, a remarkable adaptation where one half of the brain enters a sleep-like state, while the other half remains alert and maintains swimming behavior. This isn't confirmed in all ram-ventilating sharks, but the possibility raises fascinating questions about the nature of rest and consciousness in animals that can never truly stop moving. The heart of a shark that must swim constantly is relatively small compared to its body size. Too small, in fact, to pump enough oxygenated blood throughout the body on its own. So, these sharks have evolved another elegant solution. The contractions of their swimming muscles help push blood through their veins and arteries, essentially turning their entire body into an auxiliary circulatory pump. When they swim, the rhythmic contraction and relaxation of muscles along their flanks creates pressure changes that assist blood flow. It's a beautifully integrated system, but one that reinforces the absolute necessity of motion. Stop swimming, and not only does oxygen intake cease, but blood circulation becomes compromised as well. Only about 24 shark species out of over 500 are obligate ram ventilators. The majority of sharks can rest on the ocean floor, pumping water over their gills, using a process called buccal pumping. Nurse sharks, for instance, are often found resting motionless on the sea bottom, using specialized openings called spiracles behind their eyes to draw in water and push it across their gills. But for the great whites, the makos, the whale sharks, and their ram ventilating relatives, the ocean floor is not a place of rest. It's simply not an option their biology permits. In the perpetual blue of the open ocean, another group of fish has taken the concept of obligate ram ventilation to even greater extremes. Tuna, those sleek, powerful predators of the pelagic zone, are among nature's most perfectly designed swimming machines. And like the sharks we've just discussed, they cannot afford to stop moving, not ever. The bluefin tuna, the yellowfin, the skipjack, these fish are built for a life of constant motion. Their bodies are rigid, streamlined, engineered for cutting through water with minimal drag. Unlike many fish that can flex and undulate their bodies extensively, tuna have relatively stiff bodies with most of their propulsive power concentrated in the tail. This design choice creates incredible swimming efficiency at high speeds, allowing tuna to migrate across entire ocean basins, sometimes covering thousands of miles in their endless search for food and suitable spawning grounds. But this same rigid body structure that makes tuna such effective swimmers creates a problem. That inflexibility extends to their gill covers. While most fish can actively pump water across their gills using muscular action, tuna have reduced or absent buccal pumping capabilities. Their rigid heads and reduced gill mobility mean they must rely almost entirely on ram ventilation. Like the sharks, they swim with their mouths slightly open, forcing water across their gills with every forward movement. The metabolic demands driving this constant swimming are staggering. Tuna have among the highest metabolic rates of any fish. Some species have even evolved a remarkable adaptation called regional endothermy, the ability to keep certain parts of their body warmer than the surrounding water. This isn't true warm-bloodedness, like in mammals or birds, but it's a step in that direction. The elevated muscle temperature allows for faster muscle contractions and more powerful swimming, but it also dramatically increases oxygen demands. A bluefin tuna cruising at moderate speed requires a constant, substantial flow of oxygenated water across its gills simply to meet its baseline metabolic needs. Researchers studying skipjack tuna have estimated that at basal swimming speeds, the resistance created by water flowing through the gill spaces accounts for approximately 7% of the total swimming resistance the fish must overcome. When oxygen consumption doubles during more intense activity, gill resistance increases to 27% of the total. This means the fish is spending more than a quarter of its swimming effort just to breathe. It's a significant energetic cost, but one that tuna have no choice but to pay. The structure of tuna gills reflects their reliance on ram ventilation. Unlike fish that can pump water over their gills, tuna have evolved extensive fusion points binding the gill lamellae and filaments together. These fusions prevent the delicate gill structures from deforming or collapsing under the constant high-speed flow of water. In the genus Thunus, which includes the most derived tuna species, there are two distinct types of fusions, one binding the gill lamellae and another connecting the gill filaments. This elaborate structural reinforcement is necessary because these fish are moving water across their gills every second of their lives. There's another critical factor driving tuna's need for constant motion. They lack a swim bladder. Most fish have this gas-filled organ that provides buoyancy, allowing them to hover in the water column without expending energy. Tuna don't have this luxury. Their bodies are denser than seawater. If they stop swimming, they sink. So, the constant forward motion serves double duty. It provides the water flow necessary for breathing, and it generates the lift needed to maintain depth. The rigid pectoral fins, held out from the body like the wings of an aircraft, create lift as the fish moves forward, much like an airplane wing generates lift through forward motion. This creates a rather grim reality for tuna. If a tuna stops swimming, it will both suffocate and sink. There's no gentle decline, no gradual failure. The systems that keep it alive all depend on forward motion. Studies of tuna after exhaustive exercise, such as being caught and released by anglers, reveal something remarkable. These fish, once freed, swim at nearly twice their normal cruising speed for approximately 6 hours. Scientists believe this elevated swimming behavior serves to increase metabolic rate and help oxidize the lactate that accumulated in their muscles during the stressful capture event. But here's the key point. Even when exhausted, even after a traumatic experience, these fish cannot rest. They must continue swimming because their biology offers no alternative. Young tuna, from the moment they hatch, enter a life of perpetual motion. There is no learning curve, no gradual transition. They're born swimming and they will die swimming. The ocean they inhabit is vast, often featureless, offering few landmarks or resting places. For a tuna, the entire world is a three-dimensional space through which they must constantly move. They may slow down, reducing their swimming speed to conserve energy. But true stillness is not something their bodies can tolerate. Some tuna species undertake migrations that stagger the imagination. Pacific bluefin tuna have been tracked crossing the entire Pacific Ocean multiple times, swimming from the waters off Japan to the coast of California and back again. These journeys can cover more than 5,000 miles, and throughout every mile of it, the fish is swimming, breathing, staying alive through the simple act of forward motion. Gliding through tropical and subtropical seas, often in the same waters as sharks and tuna, another perpetual mover makes its home. The manta ray, with its impossibly graceful wing-like fins and gentle demeanor, seems to float rather than swim. But appearances can be deceiving. Like the sharks and tuna we've discussed, manta rays exist in what scientists call a state of perpetual motion. They never stop swimming. They can't. Manta rays belong to a group of rays that have adopted ram ventilation as their primary, and in many cases only, method of respiration. Water must flow constantly over their gills, and that flow can only be maintained through forward motion. Watch a manta ray feeding, performing elegant barrel rolls and loops through a patch of plankton, and you're watching an animal that is simultaneously eating and breathing. Every movement serves both purposes. The mechanics of manta ray respiration are particularly fascinating. Their mouths are positioned at the front of their heads, a placement that makes sense for an animal that feeds while swimming forward. As they glide through the water with their mouths open, water flows in, passes over specialized structures called gill rakers that both filter out food and extract oxygen, and exits through gill slits located on the underside of the body. The gill rakers are comb-like structures with fine projections that trap the tiny planktonic organisms manta rays feed on, while allowing water to flow through to the gills themselves. It's an integrated system where feeding and breathing happen simultaneously, both depending on constant forward motion. Unlike tuna, manta rays are not built for speed in the traditional sense. They cruise at relatively modest speeds, typically between 3 and 6 miles per hour. This is their standard pace, the speed at which they spend most of their time moving through the ocean. You might see them during night feeding sessions, spiraling gracefully through the water in areas where plankton concentrates near the surface. But make no mistake, even at this seemingly relaxed pace, they are never still. Their pectoral fins, those massive wing-like structures that can span over 20 feet in the largest individuals, are constantly undulating, creating the propulsive force that keeps water flowing over their gills. When threatened, manta rays can accelerate significantly, reaching speeds of up to 22 miles per hour. That's faster than the fastest human swimmers can manage. But whether moving at their leisurely cruising pace or sprinting away from a predator, the fundamental requirement remains the same. They must keep moving to keep breathing. There's another reason manta rays must swim constantly, and it relates to buoyancy. Like tuna, manta rays lack a swim bladder. Their bodies are denser than the water around them. If they stopped swimming, they would sink. The forward motion, combined with the wing-like shape of their pectoral fins, generates lift much like an airplane wing. As long as they're moving, this lift keeps them at their desired depth. Stop moving and they descend. This creates an interesting challenge. How does an animal that must swim constantly ever rest? The short answer, as far as scientists currently understand, is that manta rays may not sleep in the way we typically think of sleep. There's no evidence that they enter extended periods of reduced consciousness or inactivity. They may have rest periods where they're less actively feeding or moving more slowly. But true cessation of movement doesn't appear to be part of their biology. Some researchers have speculated that manta rays might use a form of unihemispheric sleep similar to some sharks and marine mammals, allowing part of the brain to rest while maintaining the swimming behavior. But this hasn't been definitively proven. The brain of a manta ray is remarkably large for a fish, actually the largest brain-to-body ratio of any living fish species. Their brains are about the size of a human fist, and they're particularly well developed in areas associated with learning, memory, and problem-solving. Some scientists believe manta rays may be capable of recognition, spatial navigation, and social interaction at levels far exceeding most fish. This intelligence might help them optimize their constant swimming, allowing them to remember productive feeding areas, navigate complex three-dimensional spaces efficiently, and perhaps even find ways to minimize the energetic cost of their perpetual motion. Manta rays have been observed engaging in behaviors that suggest both intelligence and a degree of self-awareness. They visit cleaning stations on coral reefs where smaller fish remove parasites from their bodies. The mantas will slow down, hover in the current, using minimal fin movements, positioning themselves to allow the cleaner fish access to different parts of their bodies. Even this behavior, which might appear to be resting, still involves constant motion. The fins never stop completely. The heart of a manta ray is relatively simple compared to mammalian hearts, with only 2 chambers, but it's perfectly adapted for their lifestyle of constant, relatively slow-paced swimming. The heart pumps oxygenated blood from the gills throughout the large body, a system that works well as long as the manta maintains its steady forward motion. The integration of movement, breathing, circulation, and feeding in manta rays represents one of nature's elegant solutions to the challenge of life in a 3-dimensional liquid environment. Female manta rays face an additional challenge. They're ovoviviparous, meaning they give birth to live young after a gestation period of about 12 to 13 months. Throughout this entire pregnancy, the female must continue swimming constantly, carrying her developing offspring while maintaining the steady flow of oxygenated water across her gills. When she finally gives birth, the pup emerges already capable of swimming, already equipped with the instinct to keep moving. From its very first moments of independent life, the young manta is in motion, beginning a journey that will last its entire life without pause. The Keohokt ocean's surface often feels like a boundary to us land-dwelling creatures. But for some animals, it's merely the lower edge of a 3-dimensional realm, where life happens in constant motion. Above the waves, riding the wind that shapes the sea below, albatrosses have mastered a different kind of perpetual movement. These magnificent seabirds, with wingspans that can exceed 11 feet, spend months and even years in continuous flight, rarely, if ever, touching land during their oceanic wanderings. The wandering albatross, true to its name, is one of nature's most accomplished travelers. Young birds, once they fledge from their nesting sites on remote Southern Ocean islands, may spend the next 5 to 10 years exclusively at sea. They don't return to land during this time. They don't rest on the water for extended periods. They fly, day after day, month after month, year after year. They remain aloft. This seems impossible at first consideration. How can any living creature fly continuously for years? The answer lies in a flight technique called dynamic soaring, combined with anatomical adaptations that allow albatrosses to soar with minimal energy expenditure. Dynamic soaring is a method of extracting energy from wind gradients, the differences in wind speed at different heights above the ocean surface. Wind speed increases with altitude above the sea. Right at the water's surface, friction slows the air, but even 30 or 40 feet up, the wind is moving noticeably faster. Albatrosses exploit this gradient in a repeating cycle that seems almost like magic. The bird swoops down toward the wavetops, flying into the wind. At this low altitude, the wind is slower, but the bird's airspeed is high because it's using the velocity it gained from its previous descent. Then it turns upward, climbing into the wind. As it climbs, it enters layers of progressively faster moving air. Even though it's slowing down relative to the water below, its airspeed relative to the air around it actually increases because the air itself is moving faster. At the top of the climb, the bird turns to fly with the wind, trades altitude for forward distance, swoops back down toward the water, and repeats the cycle. This S-shaped flight pattern allows albatrosses to travel vast distances while expending very little energy. They're not fighting against the wind or flapping their wings constantly. They're harvesting energy from the wind itself, using the gradient to maintain their airspeed and altitude. Studies using GPS tracking devices have shown wandering albatrosses covering more than 10,000 miles on single foraging trips, circumnavigating the entire Southern Ocean multiple times per year. Some individuals have been tracked flying around the world in just 46 days. The anatomical adaptations supporting this lifestyle are equally remarkable. Albatross wings are extremely long and narrow, maximizing lift while minimizing drag. This high aspect ratio is perfect for gliding flight. But perhaps most fascinating is a feature called the shoulder lock. Albatrosses have a specialized mechanism that allows them to lock their wing joints in the extended position. Once locked, their wings are held outstretched by skeletal support rather than muscular effort. This means they can glide for hours with minimal muscle activity, conserving enormous amounts of energy. Wandering albatrosses lack sufficient musculature to sustain continuous flapping flight for extended periods. Their flight muscles, while powerful enough for takeoff and maneuvering, simply aren't built for the kind of sustained flapping that would be required to stay aloft through muscle power alone. The shoulder lock and dynamic soaring technique allow them to work around this limitation, turning their physical constraints into advantages. But even with these remarkable adaptations, albatrosses still need to sleep. Flying for months without rest would be impossible for any vertebrate brain. So, how do they manage it? Research on frigate birds, another seabird species capable of long oceanic flights, has revealed that these birds sleep while flying, but in very brief bursts, often lasting only seconds. Scientists are confident that albatrosses do something similar. They likely use unihemispheric sleep, allowing one half of the brain to rest while the other half maintains flight control. The sleeping portions are extremely short, lasting perhaps just a few seconds at a time, but accumulated over a full day, they might add up to enough sleep to maintain brain function. Young albatrosses learning to master dynamic soaring face a steep learning curve. They must develop an intuitive understanding of wind patterns, wave heights, and air currents. They need to judge their speed and altitude precisely to maintain the soaring pattern. and they must do all of this while covering vast distances over featureless ocean, often in challenging weather conditions. The Southern Ocean, where many albatross species spend their lives, is home to some of the most consistently strong winds on Earth, areas sailors call the Roaring Forties and Furious Fifties because of the relentless gales. For albatrosses, these same winds are highways, energy sources to be harvested for their endless journeys. Food, of course, is a constant need. Albatrosses are carnivorous, feeding primarily on fish, squid, and crustaceans. They often scavenge, following ships for discarded fish, or feeding on dead animals floating at the surface. To feed, they must land on the water, but even these landing periods are relatively brief. They grab their food and take off again, returning to their soaring patterns. Over a lifespan that can extend 50 years or more, a typical albatross might cover more than 3 million miles. That's equivalent to flying to the moon and back 6 times, and all of it accomplished through a combination of anatomical adaptation and masterful exploitation of atmospheric physics. If the albatross represents endurance flight pushed to extreme limits over vast distances, the hummingbird represents the opposite extreme pushed equally far. These tiny birds, some weighing less than a penny, live at a metabolic intensity that seems to defy the laws of physics. And while they can perch and rest in ways that albatrosses cannot, their waking hours are spent in constant frantic motion because the alternative is starvation. Hummingbirds have the highest metabolism of any vertebrate for their size. A hummingbird's metabolic rate is approximately 77 times that of an average human. To put this in perspective, if a human had a hummingbird's metabolism, we would need to consume our body weight in food every single day just to survive. The hummingbird doesn't quite reach that extreme, but it's close. These birds need to consume roughly half their body weight in nectar each day, feeding every 10 to 15 minutes during waking hours. This extraordinary energy demand stems from their method of flight. Hummingbirds are the only birds capable of true hovering and backward flight. Their wings don't flap up and down like most birds. Instead, they rotate at the shoulder in a figure-8 pattern, generating lift on both the forward and backward stroke. This allows them to hang motionless in the air, perfectly positioned to feed from flowers, but it's phenomenally energy expensive. A hovering hummingbird's wings beat 50 to 80 times per second, depending on the species. Some of the smallest species can reach beat frequencies of over 200 times per second during courtship displays. The muscle tissue powering this incredible performance has the highest mass-specific metabolic rate of any vertebrate muscle. The flight muscles make up about 25 to 30% of the bird's total body weight. And these muscles are packed with mitochondria, the cellular powerhouses that generate energy. During active flight, a hummingbird's heart can beat over 1,200 times per minute. That's 20 beats every single second. The respiratory rate is similarly extreme, with breathing rates that can exceed 250 breaths per minute. All of this activity generates heat. Hummingbirds must carefully regulate their body temperature to avoid overheating during the day. But the flip side of this high-speed lifestyle creates an even bigger challenge at night. When hummingbirds can't feed because it's dark, they face an immediate energy crisis. With their tiny bodies and extremely high metabolic rates, they have very limited fat reserves. Going without food for an extended period would be fatal. Evolution has provided an elegant solution: torpor. At night, or sometimes during especially cold days when feeding is difficult, hummingbirds can enter a state called torpor, a kind of daily hibernation that's much more extreme than normal sleep. During torpor, a hummingbird's metabolic rate drops by 60 to 95%. Its body temperature, normally around 102 to 108 degrees Fahrenheit during the day, can fall by 20 to 50 degrees or more, sometimes dropping to within just a few degrees of the ambient air temperature, though rarely below about 18 to 20 degrees Celsius, even in very cold conditions. The heart rate, which beats well over 1,000 times per minute during flight, can slow to fewer than 50 beats per minute during deep torpor. Breathing becomes barely perceptible. In this state, the bird is essentially unresponsive. You could pick it up and it would show no reaction. It looks dead, but it's not. It's just conserved energy so effectively that it resembles death more than sleep. Recent research has revealed that hummingbirds can fine-tune the depth of their torpor. Rather than being an all-or-nothing response, they can enter shallow torpor, where body temperature drops by about 20 degrees, or deep torpor, where it can fall 50 degrees or more below the normal daytime temperature. The depth they choose appears to depend on their fat reserves and environmental conditions. Birds with higher fat reserves might enter deeper torpor because they can afford the time and energy required to rewarm. Birds with lower reserves might use shallow torpor, which requires less time to recover from, but doesn't save quite as much energy. Entering torpor has costs beyond just the energy required to rewarm in the morning. During deep torpor, the immune system essentially shuts down, making the bird more vulnerable to disease. The bird is also completely vulnerable to predators during this time, unable to respond to threats. And there's evidence that time spent in torpor doesn't count as normal sleep, so birds may be accumulating sleep debt that needs to be made up later. Waking from torpor is a gradual process, taking anywhere from 20 minutes to an hour. The bird must shiver to generate heat, slowly raising its body temperature back to normal levels. This rewarming process requires energy, which is why the bird needs to have some minimal fat reserves, even to safely enter torpor. Researchers studying migrating hummingbirds have found that birds enter torpor when their evening fat levels fall below a specific threshold. Below this threshold, staying warm all night would deplete their fat reserves below a critical minimum level needed for morning activity. By entering torpor, they wake up with enough fat to start foraging immediately. Interestingly, the rules governing torpor use change seasonally. During the breeding season, hummingbirds use torpor primarily as an emergency measure, entering it only when they failed to build up sufficient fat reserves during the day. But later in the season, as they prepare for migration, the pattern reverses. Birds that are fattening up for migration actually use torpor more frequently when they're fatter, using the energy savings from torpor to accelerate fat deposition for their upcoming journey. This demonstrates that torpor is more than just an emergency response. It's a flexible tool that hummingbirds can deploy strategically to meet different energetic challenges. The constant motion of hummingbird wings during waking hours, combined with the extreme metabolic fluctuations between normal activity and torpor, creates a lifestyle utterly unlike that of most vertebrates. While they can perch and rest their muscles, their metabolic engine runs so hot that periods of inactivity are measured in minutes, not hours. They're not perpetual movers in quite the same sense as sharks or tuna, which literally cannot stop moving without dying. But during their active hours, they come remarkably close to constant motion, driven by energy demands that won't tolerate delay. In the leaf litter and tunnel systems beneath our feet, another group of animals has taken high-speed living to an extreme that makes even hummingbirds look leisurely. Shrews, those mouse-like mammals with pointed snouts and endless energy, have achieved something remarkable. They possess the highest metabolic rates of any mammal. And this comes with consequences that define every aspect of their existence. Shrews live fast, furious lives measured in heartbeats that occur more than 1,000 times per minute. And they exist in a state of near constant motion because the alternative is death. A typical shrew weighs between 5 and 15 grams, roughly the weight of a nickel or a dime. Yet this tiny animal must consume 1 1/4 to 3 times its body weight in food every single day. Pygmy shrews, the smallest of all, must eat 3 times their weight daily, which means capturing prey every 15 to 30 minutes around the clock. This isn't optional or flexible, it's absolute. A shrew deprived of food can starve to death in as little as 3 to 5 hours, depending on the species and conditions. The reason for this constant need to eat comes down to basic physics and biology. Shrews have extremely small bodies with very high surface area to volume ratios. They lose heat rapidly. Maintaining a constant body temperature requires burning calories continuously, and their tiny bodies can store almost no fat reserves. What little fat they do manage to accumulate gets depleted within hours. So they're caught in a relentless cycle: hunt, eat, with almost no time for anything else. The shrew's heart reflects this extreme lifestyle. Heart rates in active shrews have been measured at over 1,000 beats per minute. That's more than 16 beats every second. For comparison, a human heart at rest beats roughly 60 to 100 times per minute. Even during intense exercise, human heart rates rarely exceed 200 beats per minute. The shrew's heart is running at an intensity that would be lethal for larger mammals, but for the shrew, it's normal. Movement is similarly extreme. Shrews have been recorded making 12 body movements per second during hunting. They're in almost constant motion, scurrying, sniffing, probing, searching for the insects, worms, and other small invertebrates that make up most of their diet. They rarely sleep in the traditional sense. Their lives are punctuated by brief rest periods, but extended sleep, like larger mammals experience, simply isn't compatible with their metabolic demands. Within hours of their last meal, they need to be hunting again. To make their relentless hunting more effective, shrews have evolved some remarkable adaptations. Many species are venomous, a trait extremely rare among mammals. The venom is produced in modified salivary glands and delivered through grooves in the shrew's teeth. When a shrew bites prey, the venom flows along these grooves into the wound. The venom is powerful enough to kill small animals like mice, and in some species, a single shrew carries enough venom to kill 200 mice if it could be injected directly. For prey, the shrew's own size or smaller, the venom often kills. For larger prey, it paralyzes. This paralysis serves a crucial function in the shrew's survival strategy. In times of relative abundance, shrews practice something called live hoarding. They bite prey, paralyzing it with their venom, and then cache the still living but immobilized animal in their burrow system. The paralyzed prey can remain fresh for days or even weeks, providing an emergency food supply for periods when hunting is less successful. A paralyzed mealworm, for instance, can survive in this state for up to 15 days, kept alive but helpless by the shrew's neurotoxic saliva. Some shrew species also use a rudimentary form of echolocation. They emit high-frequency clicks and use the returning echoes to navigate through their tunnel systems and dense vegetation where visibility is limited. This adaptation, more commonly associated with bats, allows shrews to maintain their frantic pace of movement even in complete darkness. The seasonal challenges faced by shrews are particularly severe. Unlike larger mammals that can hibernate through winter or rely on stored fat, shrews must remain active year-round. In temperate and cold regions, this creates enormous challenges. Insect populations crash during winter, making prey much harder to find. The common shrew has evolved a remarkable adaptation to this seasonal challenge. During late summer and fall, these shrews actually shrink, reducing their body mass by up to 20%. Their spines get shorter, their skulls get smaller, and major organs, including the heart, lungs, and spleen, shrink. Even their brain mass drops by 20 to 30%. This shrinking process, called Denel's phenomenon after the scientist who first described it, reduces the shrew's energy requirements during the lean winter months. With a smaller body and reduced organ mass, the shrew needs less food to maintain body temperature and basic functions. Remarkably, despite this reduced body mass, studies have shown that shrews don't increase their per-gram metabolic rate during winter. They maintain the same metabolic intensity even with smaller bodies and in colder temperatures. Scientists suspect this is because shrews constantly produce excess heat due to their extraordinarily high metabolic activity. This excess heat production, which would be wasteful in most mammals, becomes an advantage in winter, eliminating the need to further increase metabolism to compensate for cold temperatures. When spring arrives, the shrews reverse the process, growing larger again as food becomes more abundant. This seasonal size change is unique among mammals and represents an extreme solution to the challenge of maintaining a high-speed lifestyle through seasonal resource scarcity. The entire life cycle of most shrew species is compressed into a remarkably short time span. Shrews typically live only 12 to 18 months. They're born in spring or early summer, grow rapidly through the summer months, survive their first and often only winter, and breed the following spring before dying. Many shrews die in large numbers during their second autumn, their bodies simply wearing out after a year or more of relentless, high-intensity activity. This mass die-off is actually an adaptive strategy. By dying before winter, the older generation reduces competition for scarce winter food resources, increasing the survival chances of their offspring. From a shrew's perspective, life is an urgent, frantic quest for the next meal, repeated thousands of times over its brief existence. There's no time for contemplation, no periods of leisure. Every moment is dedicated to the essential tasks of finding food, avoiding predators, and when the season is right, reproducing. Its existence stripped down to its most fundamental elements, life lived at maximum intensity for maximum brevity. High above the landscape, cutting through the air with remarkable grace, another group of birds has mastered the art of staying aloft for extraordinary lengths of time. Common swifts are small dark birds that look somewhat like swallows, but are actually more closely related to hummingbirds. And like albatrosses, swifts have pushed aerial life to remarkable extremes. Once a young swift leaves its nest for the first time, it may not land again for months or even years. Tracking studies using tiny data loggers have revealed that common swifts can spend 10 months continuously airborne, flying through the night and day without touching down. They eat insects caught in flight. They drink by swooping low over water surfaces, dipping their beaks in for a quick sip. Most remarkably, they sleep while flying, though in a manner quite different from the extended torpor of hummingbirds or the suspected unihemispheric sleep of albatrosses. The sleep of swifts appears to occur in extremely brief bursts, perhaps just seconds at a time, accumulated throughout the night as the birds glide on air currents. Research suggests that during these micro-sleep periods, the birds reduce their altitude slightly as they glide with minimal wing movement, then wake briefly to flap their wings and regain altitude before another sleep bout. Over the course of a night, these brief periods might add up to enough sleep to maintain brain function, though the total is far less than what the birds achieve when they return to their nests during breeding season. Young swifts leave their nests in late summer and begin a journey that will keep them airborne until they return to breed, sometimes 3 years later. During this time, they migrate between Europe and sub-Saharan Africa, riding air currents and feeding on aerial plankton, the countless insects that drift through the atmosphere. They mate while flying, with pairs coupling briefly in mid-air before separating again. Every function of life, except laying, eggs and raising chicks, happens in the air. The adaptations supporting this lifestyle are subtle but significant. Swifts have relatively short legs and feet, barely capable of perching and completely unable to stand or walk on flat surfaces. This might seem like a disadvantage, but it's actually an optimization. Every ounce of tissue dedicated to walking would be wasted weight for a bird that essentially never walks. Instead, their entire anatomy is optimized for flight. Their wings are long and curved, creating efficient lift. Their streamlined bodies minimize drag. Even their feet, though small, have strong, sharp claws, perfect for clinging to vertical surfaces, like the inside of chimneys or hollow trees where they nest. The swift's daily pattern during its months-long flights involves considerable altitudes. At night, when flying insects descend to lower altitudes or become less active, swifts often climb to heights of 2,000 to 3,000 meters or more. At these altitudes, they engage in the gliding, micro-sleep behavior that allows them to rest while remaining airborne. As dawn approaches, they descend back to lower altitudes where flying insects are more abundant, and the day of continuous feeding begins again. Navigation for these perpetual flyers presents interesting challenges. Unlike albatrosses, which can see the ocean surface and waves below them, providing some orientation, swifts flying at night over land or sea have few visual references. They likely rely on a combination of magnetic sense, star navigation, and possibly even an ability to detect polarized light patterns in the sky. The details of how they maintain their orientation during months of continuous flight remain an active area of research. The energetic demands of constant flight are substantial but manageable for swifts because they're flying at altitudes and speeds where air resistance is relatively low, and they're efficient gliders when conditions permit. Unlike hummingbirds, which must expend enormous energy to hover, swifts can exploit air currents and thermal updrafts to reduce the energy cost of staying aloft. They're not fighting against physics. They're working with atmospheric conditions to make their perpetual flight sustainable. Across all these species we've explored, from sharks and tuna in the ocean depths to manta rays gliding through tropical waters, from albatrosses soaring over the Southern Ocean to hummingbirds hovering at flowers and shrews racing through tunnel systems, we see variations on a common theme. These animals have all, through different evolutionary paths, committed to lives of constant or near constant motion. Understanding why they evolved this way and how their bodies support it reveals fundamental insights into the relationship between form, function, and survival. The evolutionary advantages of constant motion vary by species, but some patterns emerge. For obligate ram ventilators like sharks, tuna, and manta rays, the transition to ram ventilation likely occurred as these animals became increasingly specialized for continuous swimming. As they became faster, more active swimmers, the efficiency gains from swimming with their mouths open to breathe may have outweighed the costs of losing the ability to pump water over their gills while stationary. Once committed to this respiratory strategy, their entire lifestyle became locked into patterns of continuous movement. The anatomical changes supporting ram ventilation, the fusion of gill structures, and the modifications to head and mouth shape represent irreversible evolutionary commitments. These animals can't go back to buccal pumping. They're locked into their strategy. But this strategy works, and works well, as long as they can keep swimming. The very rigidity and constraints that make stopping fatal also make their swimming more efficient, creating a feedback loop that reinforces the adaptation. For aerial species like albatrosses and swifts, the evolution of extended flight appears to be driven by the rich resources available to animals that can exploit airborne feeding opportunities or travel vast distances efficiently. Albatrosses feed on fish and squid scattered across enormous areas of ocean. By staying aloft continuously, they can cover more territory and access more feeding opportunities than birds that must return to land regularly. Swifts exploit the aerial plankton of insects that drift through the atmosphere, a food source that requires constant movement to harvest effectively. The metabolic extremes seen in hummingbirds and shrews represent different solutions to challenges of energy acquisition and thermoregulation in very small bodies. For hummingbirds, the ability to hover while feeding allowed them to exploit nectar resources that other birds couldn't efficiently access. But hovering is energetically expensive, driving the evolution of their extraordinary metabolism. For shrews, small body size provides advantages in terms of accessing tunnel systems and dense vegetation, where larger predators can't follow. But it also creates severe thermoregulatory challenges that demand constant food intake. In all these cases, we see trade-offs. The great white shark's need for constant swimming is a constraint, but it comes paired with exceptional predatory abilities and the capacity to travel vast distances. The hummingbird's metabolic intensity is demanding, but it grants access to energy-rich nectar resources that few other vertebrates can effectively exploit. The shrew's relentless pace is exhausting, but it allows these tiny mammals to survive and even thrive in environments where seasonal challenges would seem insurmountable. One particularly fascinating aspect of these perpetual movers is how they handle the universal need for sleep. Sleep appears to be essential for brain function across virtually all animals with complex nervous systems. Yet sleep and constant motion seem fundamentally incompatible. The solutions these animals have evolved hint at remarkable flexibility in how brains can function. Unihemispheric sleep, where one brain hemisphere rests while the other remains active, appears in diverse groups, including some sharks, marine mammals like dolphins and whales, and possibly albatrosses. The micro-sleep approach, seen in swifts, represents another strategy. And the complete shutdown of torpor in hummingbirds shows yet another path. These different solutions suggest that sleep, despite being universal, isn't a single inflexible state. It's a set of functions that brains need to perform periodically, but the timing, depth, and manner of sleep can be modified to fit the constraints of an animal's lifestyle. The perpetual movers challenge our assumptions about what's possible, revealing that life can find ways around seemingly absolute requirements when the right evolutionary pressures exist. Looking at these animals also reveals something about the nature of constraints in evolution. We often think of evolution as a process that removes limitations, making organisms ever more capable and flexible. But these perpetual movers show that evolution sometimes works by embracing constraints, by committing so fully to a particular strategy that reversing course becomes impossible. The shark cannot learn to pump water over its gills. The tuna cannot develop a swim bladder. These options are closed off, written out of the genetic playbook by millions of years of selection for different solutions. Yet, within these constraints, remarkable capabilities emerge. The great white shark, constrained to constant swimming, has become one of the ocean's most successful predators. The albatross, committed to its soaring lifestyle, has become one of the most widely traveled animals on Earth. Sometimes, limitations, fully embraced, become the foundation for extraordinary achievement. Research into these perpetual movers continues to reveal new insights. Scientists are developing increasingly sophisticated tracking devices that can monitor animals' movements, physiological states, and even brain activity in real time. These tools are revealing details about how these animals manage their constant motion that were simply invisible to earlier generations of researchers. We're learning about the precise timing of sleep in flying birds, the metabolic strategies of sharks during different activities, the fine-tuned thermoregulation of hummingbirds at different times of year. There are also practical applications emerging from this research. Engineers studying manta ray swimming have developed more efficient underwater drones. Aerospace designers have examined albatross flight to improve aircraft efficiency. Understanding the extreme metabolism of shrews and hummingbirds provides insights into metabolic diseases and energy regulation in other species, including humans. The perpetual movers are not just fascinating. In their own right, they're teachers, showing us possibilities we might never have imagined. As we close our exploration of these remarkable animals, it's worth reflecting on what their existence tells us about the nature of life itself. Life is not one thing. It's not a single strategy or approach. It's a vast exploration of possibility space, trying every conceivable way of solving the basic problems of survival and reproduction. Some solutions are elegant, some are extreme, some, like perpetual motion, seem almost impossible until you see them in action. The great white shark slicing through the dark ocean, the albatross riding wind currents over endless blue, the hummingbird hovering at a flower in a burst of impossible color, the shrew racing through its underground kingdom, the swift cutting through evening air at the end of another day aloft. These are not just animals. They're demonstrations of possibility. They're evidence that life, given time and the right circumstances, can find ways to thrive under conditions we might think prohibitive. And perhaps there's something humbling and inspiring in that realization. These animals don't complain about their endless motion. They don't wish for rest they cannot have. They simply exist, magnificently adapted to their circumstances, living the only lives their bodies and evolutionary histories permit. They remind us that success isn't about having every advantage or freedom from constraints. Sometimes it's about working with what you have, embracing it fully, and becoming something remarkable in the process. The ocean swells continue their endless rhythm. The wind still blows across southern seas. Flowers still bloom in sun-dappled meadows. And in all these places, the perpetual movers continue their journeys, swimming, flying, racing through their brief or extended lives, writing their stories in motion rather than stillness. They've been doing it for millions of years, and they'll likely continue long after we're gone. These testaments to life's endless capacity for adaptation and survival. If you found tonight's exploration of perpetual motion in nature intriguing, please consider leaving a like on this video and subscribing to the channel. Your comments and suggestions for future topics are always welcome. What aspects of animal biology fascinate you most? What creatures would you like us to explore in future episodes? Let us know below. Until next time, may your rest be peaceful, and may you appreciate the stillness that these remarkable animals will never know.